Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. I am John Buckman, moderator for this groundbreaking event for the International Society of Fire Service Instructors, the Fire Training Certification Program, instructors, and the fire service all over the world. We're very excited to bring you this discussion today, announcing an unprecedented new program that will raise the bar for training in the fire service industry. Today's announcement is the culmination of months of planning, collaboration, and development. I'd like to welcome everyone in the audience as well as those joining us virtually today. This announcement is being telecast to the fire service professionals across the globe and will also have a recording of the telecast available at firetcp.org. For those of you who are joining us via the web, please feel free to submit questions at any time by clicking Ask a Question in the upper right corner of the video screen. For those of you in our live audience here with us today, please save your questions until the end of the discussion, and we will invite you to address the panel at that time. You can also write your questions on one of the provided cards, and we will answer them either at the end of this event or in a follow-up communications after the event. To introduce the Fire Training Certification Program to you, we'd like to first share this brief video.
In a moment of crisis, when lives can be saved,
They're feverishly working in the back. All right. Technical difficulties prevent us from showing the video at this time, but they are working in the back, so we may, take a Hail Mary here in a few minutes and show it a little bit later. I'll introduce you to today's panelists shortly, but I also want to share with you, particularly those of you who are joining us from the live telecast, a bit about the mission of the International Society of Fire Service Instructors. For more than 6 decades, the Society has contributed to the fire service through education and support of fire instructors all over the world. The Society supports and provides opportunities for instructions through education, training, professional development, networking, mentoring programs, leadership opportunities, instructional resources, and legislative advocacy. The ISFSI leads fire and rescue instructors in their efforts to reduce firefighter fatalities and injuries, increase firefighter safety, and improve the profession through education and training. A standard like the Fire Training Certification Program has never been done before, and it is our hope today to answer your questions that you may have about this revolutionary new program. We'll be addressing many of those questions over the course of this discussion, but we'll also be reserving time at the end for discussion from you, the audience. We may not have time to answer everyone's questions today, but we'll have answers to frequently asked questions available on the program's website. And now I'd like to introduce our panelists. Steve Pegram is the president of the Society. He has served on the board of directors since 2008 and on the executive board. President Pegram was a key member in the transition of the ISFSI from its home office in Tennessee to its new home in Northern Virginia, as well as the hiring of our Executive Director, Lee Hubbard. Since 2008, under his leadership, ISFSI has doubled in membership and started many new programs and initiatives. New programs include the highly successful NFPA 1403 Live Fire Instructor Credential and the Principles of Modern Fire Attack program. Our next panelist is Lee Hubbard, who serves as the Executive Director of the International Society of Fire Service Instructors in Centerville, Virginia. Her executive leadership of the Society has included remarkable strides in membership, recruitment and retention, and the successful launch of multiple international programs, including the Live Fire Instructor Credential, as well as the development and oversight of the Principles of Modern Fire Attack Initiative and the Training Officer Credential designation. Eddie Buchanan is an assistant chief with Hanover Fire and EMS and began his career in 1982. He is a past president of ISFSI and in 2015 received the George D. Post Instructor of the Year Award. He serves on the Technical Committee for Fire Services Training for the NFPA and Executive Advisory Board for Fire Engineering Magazine and FDIC. John Murphy retired as a deputy chief after 32 years of career fire service. He is a practicing attorney whose focus is on employment practices, liability, training safety, employment policies and practices, forensic evaluation on fire operations, internal investigations, and consulting on risk management for both private and public entities. Ari Vidali is CEO of Invisys Technologies and the lead visionary of First Forward, an internet-based community designed specifically for the public safety industry. In his 20-year career, Mr. Vidali has been the lead founder and visionary for 5 high-tech enterprises, and throughout his career, he has been instrumental in developing innovative readiness strategies for military, public safety, and law enforcement commands. That is our distinguished panel who's here today to discuss this new program. And with that, let's dive into our questions for today. President Pegram, can you explain what the Fire Training Certification Program is about?
Sure. Our goal with the Fire Training Certification Program is really to elevate the industry of fire training across this country. I think we could all agree that in every state, in every region, there are certain rules, regulations, and standards, but there isn't one standard that goes across the whole country. And that makes it very difficult for us as a National Fire Service to really compare training or look at certifications of personnel, whether it be a large disaster or an incident, or even when a firefighter moves from one state to another and wants to continue their career. There really isn't a mechanism to support that and deal with that. What we're trying to do here is create a level playing field. Using the Invisys technology and the First Forward program, which has been very successful in the law enforcement side of things. Basically, we want to create this fire training certification program. So whether it be an individual instructor, a department, a training academy, maybe a state academy, or even a vendor that provides training and certification programs can all submit training or whatever curriculum that they have developed for review. It'll be reviewed by subject matter experts using a rubrics that has been created, and then eventually, if it meets all the criteria, it'll get the Fire Training Certification Program seal of approval. The idea of that then is to say it has met that standard, and that becomes the standard all across the country. So you know if you're in Maine and you're looking for a training program, you'll be able to go to the First Forward website, log into the Fire Training Certification Program. If you're searching for a training class, you'll be able to keyword search for that, and you'll bring up a lot of different things. You may bring up some videos that have been submitted. You may bring on a online class that you can download, online class that you can go and take in some other LMS systems platform. It'll link to that. It also allows somebody like myself who may develop their own training class that I've come up with and I've developed myself. I can submit that, have it developed, have it reviewed, and post it on there. For the techie people in the room and the listeners at home, think of it a little bit, at least part of it, as being like iTunes for fire training. You'll be able to keyword search for a topic, find training that's available, whether that's training that you're downloading, training that you're taking online, or potentially registering for a course. and it'll allow you to do that. Click on it, register for it, or download it, whatever the case may be. Some of the training will be free. Some of the training, there may be a cost, but the end user decides that. You, as fire instructors or vendors that are going to submit stuff to be reviewed by the Fire Training Certification Program, will decide the cost. And basically creating a marketplace for training, but also making sure that all the training on that site has been validated and approved across a national standard.
Thank you, Steve. Director Hubbard, I have 2 questions for you. Can you tell us about the review process for the Fire Training Certification Program, and how will the review process set new standards?
Sure. Everyone in this room and those watching around the globe know the difference between a tolerable training program and an exceptional training program. So our goal is really to take what makes a program exceptional and to put that into an evaluative rubric with quantifying terms. The standards themselves are best practices from across the world in terms of curriculum development. The program itself is more like a third-party auditor system. So curriculum would be audited and reviewed by multiple subject matter experts. Since the reviewers are coming from recommendations within the profession, you all sitting in the room today, those watching from around the world, they're essentially the standards that you have said meet and exceed the training expectations. We've already received a couple questions earlier in the last couple weeks about who's creating the rubric, who's creating the standards, and what gives them the right to do that. The society has our own internal idea of what exceptional training looks like and what those curriculum standards are. So that was kind of our starting place when we moved on with this. At this point, we're engaged with adult learning specialists, SMEs who have built their career around curriculum development, and other organizations who have a training mission to get them to have some buy-in into that rubric. I think what's really important and essential for everyone to understand is that the rubric will evolve. It's not a stagnant process. Just like good training evolves because of research or new learning techniques for adult education, this rubric will evolve to fit those needs as well. So don't think of it as something that's stagnant, that's just going to be sitting around. We want it to be the best of the best, and if that needs to be updated on a constant basis, we'll make sure that that happens.
Thank you, Lee. The program is going to be very robust, but it's not going to be impossible.
Absolutely not.
Ari, can you explain the technology that will be used in implementing the Fire Training Certification Program?
Absolutely, John. Thank you for asking. There are 2 major trends that are happening, and the technology is trying to address both of them at the same time. The first one is the silver tsunami that we hear about. A lot of the knowledge in the fire industry moving out of the fire industry. And so how do we capture that? How do we get that digitized in a way that then can help the young, new firefighters who are coming in on the line absorb the wisdom that has been gleaned over years and years and years or decades of knowledge capture by the earlier generation. And so how could we digitize that on a massive scale? So that's a big problem, and to try and do that not just nationally but internationally requires technology that is both scalable to the size of the problem as well as highly secure, because some of the information that we want to be able to capture in here needs to be well secured. And so the technology is essentially going to do 4 key things. The first one is it's going to connect the reviewers, the review panel for content, with the content providers so that the providers can submit the content up electronically. And we think that there's going to be thousands and ultimately tens of thousands of different courses, whether they be online or offline, that are being submitted through this process. So we need an efficient way to distribute that to the right subject matter experts that are out there, to allow them to do their reviews, to capture the details on those reviews, and ultimately grant or deny fire TCP certification to courses. So that's number 1. Number 2 is to aggregate all of the courses that are available to the fire service across the globe in a single place. Right now, it's simply too hard to find where are the top 3 courses in this discipline or this subject area in the world. It's very difficult to do that. We want to simplify it, and there's a lot of technologies that we're used to on the internet that do that. We're bringing those technologies to bear on the fire service. And so there's going to be an international training catalog that aggregates all of those training opportunities in one place. So whether you're a firefighter or you're a training captain, you can simply go up there, search for that, and find exactly what you're looking for and what's going to be most beneficial for your firefighters. So that's number 2. And then number 3, all of the training that's being taken is going to be tracked. So essentially, the distribution of that training, if it's online training or a video, we'll be able to distribute that training to tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, hopefully millions of firefighters around the world, and as well as track that, which leads me to number 4. Each firefighter through this program will have the opportunity to set up, for no cost, a lifelong training record that follows them wherever they go. So rather than putting their certificates in a shoebox in their closet, this is the digital modern day equivalent of that. These certificates that are being provided digitally are validated, so if it has a fire TCP seal on it, other fire departments will understand what that means, and therefore they become portable. So whether you're moving from one department to another or one state to another, these training records belong to you, and you can take them wherever you want to go. So I encourage everyone to go to the site and actually create yourself a profile. Firstforward.com is the place to do it. You can get to it through firetcp.org. So if you just go to that site, you'll be able to set up your profile.
Thank you, Ari. Scalable. That's what we all need in the fire service, because one size does not fit all. Chief Buchanan, what are some of the problems that you think departments will face when reviewing or seeking content for continuing education?
Well, I think there are 2 key parts to that. The first piece is recognizing the need for continuing education, right? We've been trying over the last 20 years to work really hard to get the fire service to be accepted as a profession, a true profession. And a part of that is having documented and industry-wide Con Ed requirements. You know, that's something we've been working on. Some states, some localities require continuing education, some places don't. And we have to move towards that. As a fire department, regardless of what everybody else might be doing, as fire departments, we have to kind of demand that and push for that Con Ed requirement to achieve that end goal as being a profession. The next part of that is the quality of that continuing education content, right? So the internet is awesome. It came along, 20 years ago, I guess. I remember when we got it, and we realized we could train through it. And it's been great. If you look at examples like Fire Dynamics, the work that the Society has done, that content has been seriously vetted. Everything we've released related to Fire Dynamics has been reviewed by all sorts of experts and engineers and all that before it is ever released. But some content is not. Some things you find out there in internet land may or may not be quality, may or may not be accurate. So as a training chief, if I'm the guy who's responsible for assigning continuing education in my fire department, how do I know what it is? And with the staffing issues that we have in fire departments kind of across the board, my training shop is pretty small. I don't have somebody to sit around and search the internet and go through and try to figure out what's good content and what's bad content. So this gives me a way to see that seal, to see that I know that it's been vetted, I know it's quality content reviewed by subject matter experts, and I can assign it through whatever system I might be using in my fire department to my folks and know that I'm going to get the quality that I'm looking for. So I think we all need to go to Con Ed requirements, whether you have them or not, and then we have to be careful about making sure those things we do require and we do get from our field personnel are quality.
Thank you, Eddie. Lee, as part of the validation process, the Society will have to select reviewers to validate the information that's being submitted. How will the Society do that?
This is probably the most asked question to date, is who are the subject matter experts and how are we going to find them? They're going to come from recommendations from the profession. That's the starting point of where we're going to look. They're individuals who are very specialized within the profession, and they obviously have a proven resume. But on top of the resume, because let's be honest, anybody can write what they want onto a piece of paper and hand it to you, they have to be experienced and active within the profession. They basically put in their elbow grease to make it, elevate themselves within the profession. They have the education to back their experience. And essentially, they've rolled up their sleeves and they've done the work. These are individuals who really understand and have implemented the industry's best practices. And they're the ultimate balance of knowledge and performance. And so those are the individuals we'll be looking for and using as subject matter experts.
All right, going to be a challenge, but again, as you said, we want active people who are interested in helping this program and making a difference in the future of training and education. That's really what it's about. Steve, can you talk about the portability and the importance of that in training?
Sure. So already hit on it a little bit. An individual will be able to go onto the site and create their own profile, which will track all their training regardless of how it is delivered, where they do it. The neat thing about that is, myself, I've lived in 3 different states, worked for several different fire departments, so I have a great big 3-ring binder of all my stuff that I keep taking with me. And at some point, if I lose that, I'm going to have trouble proving the training and certifications that I've received over my 28 years. The nice thing about this process is the portability of it is it's going to live in the internet, in the cloud, if you will, and it follows you anywhere. So it doesn't matter whether you're taking training in Maine, you live in Maine, you take a class in Florida, then you move to Illinois and you take a class in California. It'll track all that. It'll track all that information. But also take it a step higher. Some departments may choose to use this as a department tool to track and assign training like Eddie talked about. So it may be used by a training officer to have an individual log in for all their people and track training and certification, assign courses and do things like that for a fire department or for an organization or even an academy. But the nice thing about that is then if one of those firefighters leaves, like I see a lot in our region, firefighters leave one department and go to work for another, maybe a larger department or a department that pays more, or maybe you're going from volunteer to part-time paid to full-time paid. That information, that portability, all the content, everything that you've done is going to go with you.
Great.
Hey, John, and I'll add on to that. The portability issue has been a significant challenge in the fire service ever since I've been responsible for training, really. I've seen numerous cases where you're qualified in, let's say, Virginia, and you go to Florida, and you get down there, and you've got these certificates, but they don't really necessarily mean anything in another state or another locality. So we've been trying to achieve that for a long time in the fire service. You come in my fire department, you bring me your certificates, I'll look at it, and I have to, figure out what's what. And it's even so complicated in the state that I live in that the fire chief has to write a letter to authorize us to go to the state to find out is that stuff portable or not. I mean, it's good grief, So this would, if we can get this thing to work like, man, it's going to be so much easier for somebody like me because I can just go into a system. Do they have it? Do they not? We know that it's been vetted and good. Let's move on. I can feel good as the authority having jurisdiction. I can click that box in my system and they can move forward. Man, it will save a lot of time.
Great. Next question is for you, but you may have already addressed some of it in the challenges of having a program like this, but also what other professions may be doing something similar to this?
Well, it's interesting. If you look at other industries, you look at law enforcement is doing exactly this at this point. I mean, they already have the model up and running and working as we're trying to do. So I see great value in that in a couple ways. A, they've kind of laid a path out for us to follow how it can work. B, I also know there's probably some cross-pollination there because with some of the stuff we're doing these days with active shooters and dynamic environments, we have the ability to kind of cross paths there that we wouldn't have had that bridge before. You also see this types of systems in the medical field, whether the national registries and these types of things have already climbed this hill. So we can see that the path is there. So it's not that we're cutting new ground. We're basically following into a path that we know that is tested and provides a whole lot of, I think, value-added stuff, too, because we'd be able to work with medical field, work with law enforcement fields, and other public safety genres to kind of share information, too.
All right. Thank you, Eddie. Legal issues. None of us ever worry about legal issues in the training industry. John Murphy, as I said earlier, is a society member and a practicing attorney. John, how can this program negate some of the liability involved when training is put into question from a legal standpoint?
Oh, that's a great question, John. From the lawyer's perspective, both the plaintiff's attorneys and the defense attorneys would look at firefighters' training records if there's an event involving a fire or an EMS or something that happens while you're on a response. And many times when I ask for training records, or we subpoena them, or we do a deposition and we want the firefighter to bring in their training records, I think it was mentioned by several of our speakers that it's in a big box, and so to sort through all of that sort of stuff creates somewhat of a hardship for the defense attorneys if they're defending your department, and more so for the plaintiff's attorneys, which is okay with me. But to put something I think that is in an environment that has portability, that is in an environment that has searchability, so you can find the records, and have a training that's approved by the society, which I believe, and I agree with Eddie as a training officer in my organization. It was a disaster to try and find quality and certifiable and certified training, and so it takes a long time for the training officer to find that. And now I think that this program is going to provide that sort of foundation and footprint, not only for the department, but for your attorneys that would be defending you, that your firefighters are actually trained to a standard. And I think this program is going to create that standard to make the training of quality, of excellence, and will it reduce the liability? We hope so.
And that's what we're all about, is reducing our liability, our potential liability, because we know something's going to happen. Legal system is going to get involved.
Exactly.
And so it's all about reducing our potential risk. Well, that concludes our panelist discussion. I'm giving those in the audience here warning. We have opportunities for questions coming up in a couple minutes. And those who are on the virtual web can also submit questions via the web. You can also submit questions via Twitter at FireTCP. So if you want to submit questions that way, or you can send an email to us as well at info@firetcp.org, and we'll address those questions as soon as we can. As I said earlier, we're going to also have on the website frequently asked questions, but we have the video ready to queue up now, and so we will go to the video presentation before we go to questions. So I'm giving you a warning to start thinking of your questions, get them formulated.
In a moment of crisis, when lives can be saved or lost by a split-second decision, our firefighters' success is determined by the caliber of their training. But right now, firefighter training standards vary from state to state, city to city, and even department to department, leaving many firefighters without access to critical, life-saving skills and knowledge. Introducing the Fire Training Certification Program, an unprecedented way to ensure that firefighters around the world are trained to their full potential. Powered by First Forward, the Public Safety Training Network, and backed by the International Society of Fire Service Instructors, the Fire Training Certification Seal guarantees that a course has been verified at the highest quality in the industry and has been designed to reduce risk, minimize injuries, and save lives. These courses will raise the bar of industry quality and empower our firefighters with the training they need to respond with confidence and do what they do best: save lives. Elevate your training. Join us today. The Fire Training Certification Program.
All right, thank you. Before we go to questions, I hope you feel some excitement. I was not involved in the development of this process until they asked me to become the moderator. Then I started to study it. I've been around the fire service for 47 years. This is about our future. This is about changing our future, not tomorrow. Think about the EFO program when it started. How valid was it when it started? All kinds of people ask questions. But today, it is a standard. This is our opportunity here to help create our future. We create our future versus having other people create the future for us. So with that, I would open this up for questions, and we have 2 microphones. If you'll just raise your hand, stand up, we will run the microphone over to you.
Hey, John.
Yes.
If I could, I'd like to just make a comment. From a fire chief standpoint, an instructor standpoint, and the president of the society, when we first got involved in this, I was probably like some of you right now. I didn't understand it. It was explained to me and shown to me, but I wasn't connecting the dots. And it wasn't until I went and met with Ari and his staff and the first 4 people and looked at the platform and looked at the success that they already have in the law enforcement community. And I think that's what's really important here is this is not new. It's new to the fire service. But this already exists in the public safety realm. There are already hundreds, if not thousands, of law enforcement agencies already using a very similar platform designed for them to provide law enforcement training. And basically, we're just copying those successes and trying to make the same national standard on the fire side that already exists in the law enforcement community. Once I saw that and I saw all the pieces of the puzzle is when I became somebody that could support it both personally and professionally. So I hope that helps a little bit. But it's already out there. It's already working on the law enforcement side. And a big part of that is we're seeing states adopting it as the seal of excellence that they require for law enforcement continuing ed. And a lot of federal agencies, a lot of the federal law enforcement agencies are using this product on the law enforcement side. So our hope is we as a society will push our curriculum and things through this program. We're hoping fire departments do, but individuals as well. People that are instructors submit their stuff and things like that. And we're hoping that the states who we've been talking to, the state fire training agencies, will also adopt it as their standard.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Any questions at this time from the audience? Dave?
Thank you, sir. Question first up. The law enforcement community doesn't have a flavor of NFPA. They have CALEA, but they don't really have a pro-qual standard like the fire service does. And most states are either IFSAC or Pro Board accredited already for their certification programs. And I realize that's not curriculum, that is just the certification process. But there is transportability provided by that. And the question would be, what would this give us that IFSAC and Pro Board certification doesn't give us already? And then as one other point, I used to be the state training director of Evil, Florida, with which was a nightmare for anybody trying to get into that state. But they were run by state law. There wasn't bureaucrats making decisions there. That was coming through interest groups to legislators, and that's how that became regulated. I'm missing something here, how that might help, how this might help that.
All right, our panel.
I'll kick it off and see who else wants to jump in. I don't think that this platform is so much for the initial firefighter certification, which is what a lot of us are concerned with when we're talking about initial certification to meet a state standard and meet IFSAC or Pro Board to become a certified firefighter. It's a lot more than that. It may be those things, and those programs may be submitted and approved and become portable across the nation, but it's all the other stuff that we do. It's all the training that you do every day in the fire service, whether it be a bloodborne pathogen class, a class on car fires, or the example was given before about the fire dynamics program that ISFSI has worked on. It's providing a standard of excellence and putting a seal of approval on all those other training classes that a training officer might be developing at his kitchen table at home or in his office at the fire station or somebody at a training academy. Right now there is no seal of approval or certification process nationally for all that other stuff we do. Yes, we all do initial Firefighter 1 certification to an NFPA standard, but at the same time, look at how many states have Firefighter 1 and 2 classes that are different lengths. Just where we're sitting here in Cincinnati, Ohio, if we were to walk, drive, or swim across the Ohio River to Kentucky, the difference in a Firefighter 1 and 2 curriculum is a couple of 100 hours difference. So what's the difference? Are Ohio firefighters less trained than Kentucky firefighters or vice versa? I don't know the answer to that, but even with the NFPA standards and the state certifications of that, we still don't really have a standard. We call it a standard, we say it's a national standard, but we all know in this room and those listening at home, it really isn't. And my own personal experience with that is moving from New Jersey, where I was a nationally registered EMT, and I moved to Ohio, and they made me retake National Registry. So, yeah, it's a national standard, but what's the point of the national standard if it's not portable, if it doesn't come with me and get me certified in that new state? So I think that's some of the stuff we're working on, but it's so much more than that initial certification, those NFPA-approved courses, Fire Officer 1, Fire Officer 2, Instructor, Inspector. It's all the other stuff we do as a fire service, and getting those classes that maybe even some of the students in this room teach, on a Saturday at a fire department. Submit that course. Vet it through the process and get the seal of approval. You'll be able to generate classes. You'll be able to post classes. You'll be able to set dates and times that you're doing a training class if it's hands-on. And the system will not only take care of the registration for you and all that, but it'll spit out the certification, the certificates at the end. So I hope that answers some of it.
Okay. John, from a legal standpoint, what Steve just described from a continuing education standpoint, we all have continuing education course that we put together on a fly. And maybe have objectives, maybe don't, many times don't, versus having a validated curriculum here that's been reviewed and has the seal of excellence. How does that help with liability?
Well, I think that the liability aspect is addressed again when you have the subject matter expert review and approve the curricula that may have been developed, like Steve said, on the kitchen table somewhere, and gets put into a file, and you drill to it. But what standard does that meet? And so, as an attorney, we take a look at, did you use the best practice? Did you provide the most up-to-date sort of material available for training for your firefighters, as opposed to something that you created 10 years ago and is way outdated? So we look for material that's up-to-date, current, has been approved and reviewed by other people, and the curricula, in its certifiable state, helps the attorney defend the department. Is that, yes, we have the best programs available. Yes, they've been approved by a certifying entity. And yes, it minimizes, again, the liability on your organization that your firefighters are not well trained. And that's one of the questions that you see is, was the firefighter trained to do this particular procedure or do this particular evolution? And so by using this program, the answer is yes, they are well trained. They're the best trained that they can be based on the best available curriculum.
Thank you, John.
And
Eddie?
I think kind of try to add on to answer your question, Dave. I think the big focus here is the Con Ed focus to start, as the low-hanging fruit, so to speak. And to give you some examples of how what that might look like, just from the revisions of the 1403 we've seen, like we've got a new revision getting ready to come out, and I can't speak on behalf of the committee without a committee vote, but I'll tell you my opinion, right? So what we've had a lot of discussions about have been we want the live fire training should have an objective. And oftentimes you'll see evolutions that kind of go awry. There really wasn't a clear objective other than burn stuff. They really didn't have a focused objective in that evolution. And I think this is where we have some really good opportunity, is to provide the context of what that criteria should be. This is Con Ed burns and whether they be your annual in-service burns and taking kind of the 1403 and the 1410 and all these things that guide those, give those things framework. Now we can get even more specific and have some commonality about what those objectives should be, with some subject matter expert input, about what are we actually doing, bring a little science to it. So I think and what I hope will happen is we'll back into solving the other bigger problem about IFSAC Pro Board and what do you do, because Virginia has been a dual, carried both seals on their certifications. It still can't go to some other places, it's very frustrating. So hopefully over time we'll be able to solve that bigger problem eventually. But right now I think coming in at it with the Con Ed focus and providing context to some of these evolutions where we've lacked in the past, even though we have the standards to go with it, they don't get to that level of detail. And this connects the dots.
And what you train beforehand, the behaviors that you train are the behaviors you'll get on the fire ground. Mm-hmm. And so what is not being certified today by any organization is what are the behaviors that we are training. We're certifying tests, we're certifying organizations, but what's critical is that we provide the absolute best training to all of our firefighters out there. And we should make this our personal mission to see that that training goes as high in terms of quality as we possibly can, because a lot of the things that happen on the fire ground are incredibly dangerous. And so if we train without objectives, if we train with yesterday's science and not today's science, we're going to be putting lives at risk. And it's our job to make sure that only the best practices get out there in the hands and hearts and minds of these young firefighters who are going into dangerous situations. And that hasn't been done before. Second thing that hasn't been done before is creating a place, a space where all of you can have conversations about these things, where the best minds can be pulled together to talk about these things in terms of what are the behaviors that we need to have on that fire ground and how do we make things better for these firefighters that are coming in. The third thing we haven't had is a space where all of the knowledge that's in your heads right now, the years and years of knowledge and application of principles in actual context and in high-risk situations can be brought to bear for the next generation in a very efficient manner. So we are hoping that as part of this, that each one of you instructors who have something to say to the next generation of firefighters, who has a new best practice or something that you've learned, takes your content through this process and gives back to the young guys who are coming on the fire line.
Thank you, Ari. And you used a couple words there, behavior modification. That is a key component of what training is supposed to be about. It is about behavior modification, changing what we do, if necessary, changing what we do so it's better for tomorrow. Lee, did you have a comment?
Well, I just wanted to remind everybody that from a consumer standpoint, a consumer of training, this actually empowers you. I mean, I'm willing to bet my next paycheck that almost everyone in this room has, as a training chief, has brought in some training to their department. At the end of the day, sat back and had to hire someone else to come in to undo what just got done. And so from a consumer standpoint, and spending dollars on your training, dollars that are limited to begin with, this helps eliminate that, or at least it empowers you to make the right decisions to do so. So envision your Amazon.com setup where you consume a product, you use it, and now you evaluate that product and you review it. And that becomes a live, living document for the next guy to look at when they're going through the process and they're getting to see what the curriculum is. So we also hope that from that standpoint, we're going to be saving you money in terms of bringing the right content into your departments.
We didn't address that, and probably it's a good moment to just talk about it for a second. Every course every student who takes a course will be shipped a survey, 1 to 5 stars. You guys all now shop on the web. You look on the web and you see, what are the ratings here on this particular product or this particular item. We're bringing that at a massive scale to the fire training world, so that every course will have a 1 to 5 star rating, and it's a living document. So every firefighter who takes it has an opportunity to say, this was really, really great training. I think this has the potential of saving lives. Another one might say to another piece of training, this was terrible. Don't waste your hour of time on this particular training program. That will immediately create a scenario where the weak training programs are weeded out and only the really good ones rise to the top. Market dynamics being brought to the fire training world.
All right, thank you. We do have a couple of questions from our virtual audience. How will the ISFSI be working with local jurisdictions to implement this program?
Everybody's looking at me. Well, I think our initial take on that is that we have already started reaching out to other organizations and asked them to help be a part of the process, because we understand that everyone has an area of expertise. So we're working with other organizations to make that happen. The North American Fire Training Directors have been a part of the conversation for actually well over a year now. So they've known that this is in the works and has come into fruition. My personal goal is that I'll continue to work independently and individually with each one of those states to help answer any questions they have and to see what we can do to be of assistance.
Okay, great. Okay, one more question from the virtual audience, and then if there's any in the live audience, give you a warning, get ready. How does the online training interact with each firefighter's individual state? I'm not real sure exactly what they're asking, except maybe in the online registration process and recording of this. How's it going to interact with states? Documentation, validation.
So over time, what our intention is to provide a place where if one is taking online training through the Fire TCP International Training Catalog, that will automatically be logged into your record.
He lost Mike.
Can you guys hear me? Will be automatically logged into your portable training record. So nothing more has to be done for that to happen. There will be cases where you're out there and maybe you have, you're accessing an LMS from your state, or maybe there's a third-party provider or a university where you're taking your training from. You also can ingest that training into your portable training record by uploading that certificate and that record in. So day one, it's not going to be connected to everything on the planet, but over time, we're going to start to connect this to many other things. We're starting to see this in the law enforcement domain, where it started out as sort of standalone. Anything that was coming through the National Training Catalog would automatically go in, and now APIs are being established, or application programming interfaces to other systems, so a lot of that can be automated over time.
Okay.
John, I could, just from my experience with Virginia, oddly enough, in Virginia, you don't have to have any continuation requirements mandated by the state. But you do for EMS, not for firefighting, right? And the way our EMS system is set up is that Con Ed comes in through our learning management platforms. It just automatically reports at midnight and shows up on your transcript the next day. We have if we had the requirement for Con Ed in the fire system, it would be the same methodology. It's not that hard to do from a technology standpoint. It's just a report that dumps whenever you tell it to. It shows up in your transcript. So it really just depends on how you want to set it up and what particular state you happen to live in, whether you require Con Ed or not. So we need to fix that in Virginia. We're on it, though.
All right, thank you, Eddie. All right, here's probably the big question: cost. Is there a cost for submitting material? Is there a cost for accessing that material by a potential student or another instructor?
The answer is yes. Last time I checked, technology was not free. So the way that this works, and I don't want to get tied up into the numbers because all of that's going to be available online and you'll be able to look at it and review it. But essentially, there is a cost up front to the instructor, the learning vendor, or the individual submitting their training or curriculum to be evaluated. That expense goes to pay for subject matter experts who are going to be reviewing that curriculum. And I'm not talking just one subject matter expert, I'm talking multiple subject matter experts, because the more eyes we have on each piece of the curriculum, the better it's going to be. And it goes to help pay for the technology, which is the infrastructure in which this exists. So yes, there's a cost to the instructor. The consumer or the student picks and choose what money they want to spend. The instructor can set the fee for whatever their class is. So if the instructor is offering a free, and I'll give you an example, ISFSI offers free video, training videos. There's no cost to you as the consumer. There would be a cost potentially for getting the seal to begin with. I mean, that's something that we as an organization would assume that expense because we truly believe that our training material is that elevated. But as a consumer and as a user of it, you may decide that the free stuff isn't rated very high and it's not something you want to do, but you are willing to spend X, Y, and Z number of dollars to get something that has been rated extremely high and the reviews are coming back very high. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to waste your time or the time of those within your department. You want to give them the best training. So the answer is yes. And as far as specific dollars go, I think it's best if everybody just checks it out on the site.
All right, thank you.
I would say that for those, everyone who wants a portable training record, that is at no cost.
Correct.
To the fire industry at all. So
Correct.
those that want to track There's departmental training tools, so the department can go in and track the training on their guys. The individuals can track their own training. There's no cost to any of that. This is being provided to the industry at no cost.
The only cost for a user, a student, would be if they decide to choose a class that has a cost.
Correct.
So the decision will be yours when you register for a class or decide to take a class, which class you want to select, and it'll show what the class, just like I gave the iTunes example. Do you want to buy the album, or do you want to buy the single? Or do you just want to hit the preview?
And I hope everyone understood that the department analogy they keep using is that Chief Pegram can assign a department to this and list every single firefighter in his department. He can see their training records, and then he can virtually assign them training as he feels fit. And then when that firefighter, sadly, moves on to another department, the training record moves from outside of the department that Chief Pegram is managing and goes to the new department. So it's really, all that's free. And that's a pretty cool tool to have.
It works both ways. Using that iTunes analogy, I can buy the album or I can buy the song.
Yeah.
It also works from the instructor's perspective as you're the artist, right? So if you have a program that you've developed, that you teach through your own, however you set it up, this could be a possible distribution method, to make your training more available than it might otherwise been. So it's very much an iTunes kind of environment where the consumer can reach out and grab the things they like, and if you're a creator of that material, you have a platform that you can work with as well.
Okay. We've answered part of this next question, but as an instructor, let's say or as the training officer, my fire chief says, we want you to get your training program reviewed, validated, get the seal of excellence from this program, from the fire training certification program. We've mentioned catalog many times. So I submit 24 outlines with all the objectives. It's been approved. Does it have to be accessible within the system so that other people can have access to it?
So two different types of courses. One is online, one is offline. So there's two different paths that a curriculum designer can go down or an instructor can go down. If it's an online course, then and it has the seal, then it must live on the catalog. And the reason is this catalog is going to be the aggregation of all internationally certified content from Fire TCP. There is going to be one place to go. If you're doing a course inside within your firehouse and it's just for you guys, then you could run this through and never advertise that course is available to anyone outside of your organization. So you can keep it within your world. At no time are the curriculum materials, the lesson plans, the learning objectives, or all of that still belongs to you. You own all the copyrights for that as the creator of that content. So there's a lot of protections around your intellectual property, which the FAQ helps answer on firetcp.org.
Okay. So it will be both. It could be a paper as well as an electronic based. Again,
yes.
That was another one of our questions here. Do we have any questions from our audience? Yes. Good.
Are there any classes online now? And if not, what's the expected timeline to start to build out that catalog?
Yeah, so the answer to that is no. Because one of the things that we're working on right now is continuing to work to develop and have as many eyes as we can on the evaluative tools, so the rubric. I anticipate that we will have that wrapped up and approved. And one of the things we haven't talked about is that there is an advisory board to this whole process of individuals who are not only members of ISFSI, but individuals outside of that who are just amazing instructors and what I would term experts within curriculum development. So as soon as that's approved, we can move forward, and I would anticipate that would be happening in the next 2 to 3 weeks. The next part after that is what we've already started is the acquisition of subject matter experts. So as we continue to build that cadre of subject matter experts, then we will go ahead and start accepting curriculum to go through the review process. That's all going to be happening very quickly because we want this program to be successful, so I anticipate that within the next 30 days, you'll start to see curriculum come in and be evaluated. ISFSI will be submitting all of our programs and our credentials through the process and through the evaluative tool.
All right, thank you, Lee. John, I'm going to throw this one at you. We have an attendee virtually from Australia. And he's asking about how valid is a program developed in the U.S. for a country with a different legal and social responsibility?
Well, I'm not an international lawyer, but I think the answer would be if again, it goes back to this acceptance by the local jurisdiction or whoever has the authority from a governmental agency. Maybe in Australia, there's a little bit more oversight and law that has been passed through the land that indicates that training material would be approved by a governmental agency. But I think the important part is the training that they're looking at approving has already been certified and been reviewed by subject matter experts, and it's the best practices at that time that's possible. So I think that there's maybe an additional step the firefighter from Australia would have to go through, or his department would have to go through, to ensure that when they subscribe to these sort of learning plans, second of all, that the validity of the program has been approved maybe by the jurisdiction having authority that would go through that hoop or decision process as well.
Thank you.
Hey, John, it's the International Society of Fire Service Instructors as well. So, and there's a lot more discussion than there has been historically about how we operate across the oceans. We're starting to have a lot more interaction with Europe and Australia about why we do what we do here and why they do what they do there, what is similar, what's different. And there tends to be legitimate reasons why they are different. There's construction and as the guy who sent the question in, there's different legal and social issues there. So I think this is something that could easily evolve into something that, this is the same system, but this is tailored to his country, and their resources and their mindset and practices and work just fine. I mean, I think that would be interesting to watch.
But generally, sharing the science
Yes.
is absolutely vital to creating better training down the road, because some of the principles that the scientific community is figuring out are applicable probably universally. So there's always a good idea to share that knowledge.
And Australia submits a product, it becomes electronic. America, other countries can use it as well. So I mean,
if you look at the logo, you'll see that we intentionally did not call it the U.S. Fire Training Certification or the National Fire Training Certification. Okay. We truly are an international organization.
Right. That question sort of leads into this one. Is this program going to be certifying content or training practices?
The rubrics are set up to be looking at adult learning objectives and the delivery model of curriculum that's being developed. So our primary focus is looking at the way the program is set up and how it's going to be delivered in terms of adult learning objectives. The content will also be reviewed, although that's not the primary focus. But we will notice that we will have information within built into the rubric, such as, does it meet JPR objectives? What standards is it citing, and things of that nature. So, absolutely, in both regards.
And specific KSAs.
As part of your submittal, you have to cite your references.
Correct.
So if you're saying something needs to be done a certain way, you're going to have to cite, is that from an NFPA standard? Is that from a textbook? It just can't be opinion.
So John and Steve's garage would not be a good reference. That's what you're saying?
Probably not.
Perhaps not.
Probably not.
Yeah, John, I think what I'm kind of sniffing between the lines on that question is a lot of this stuff, are we going to tell you how you should fight fire? If you want to get down in the weeds, that's what everybody kind of wants to know. Well, what you'll find is when you look at all the various types of tactics that we've used in the fire service historically on any side of the ocean, it really doesn't matter. All the tactics we've used historically have all been, in my opinion, valid tactics, where we get a little sideways has been the context of when those tactics may or may not be applied, but the tactics have always been valid. And I think that's what our purpose is to talk about what is a valid tactic in a valid context. And then you decide as a locality when you choose that particular method, right? So I don't think any of the things you've seen happen in the fire service in the last 10 years are trying to tell you how to fight fire. They're providing validity to the reasons why we make those choices that we make. You still have to, as the incident commander, decide which choice is right for you at that moment.
The example I think of is positive pressure attack, PPA.
Yep.
So positive pressure attack is not something widely used in the United States. There are areas and departments that use PPA. There's other places that would, if you tried to bring up the idea of positive pressure attack, would attack you, literally. They would get upset. The point being is I could foresee somebody creating a positive pressure fire attack course and receiving the certificate seal of approval. It's up to the individual student or the department, the instructor, the training chief or whatever to decide, are we going to select that course for our department to be trained on?
For credit.
If you don't believe in PPA, don't select that class. Move on to what you do believe in and what you do.
So that training officer still has that option. We have a catalog with 50
Right.
50
It's going to be in the
courses.
catalog. It's going to be available. But if it's not something that you do locally or that you're interested in training your firefighters to do, don't do it.
Well, they could take it, but they won't receive credit at the local level for it, if that's
right.
the decision made locally.
Sure. An individual firefighter will be able to select anything they want and pay for it if there's a cost. But from a department level, the department will decide what classes, what curriculum, what tactics, in the example, your firefighters are trained on. That's still your decision.
In the law enforcement world, there's a good analogy for this question, which is that in the National Certification Program, which is their version of this, they don't debate tactics. They allow any tactic that's founded in science or precedent that is a valid tactic, they will certify. They're not going to get into the debates of this approach or that approach for fighting a fire, or is the content grounded in research? I mean, is there valid materials backing this up? Is it qualitative? Does the instructor who's putting forth this content know what they're talking about? Are they certified, or are they Billy Bob somewhere in a truck? Do they have the pedigree to be able to make the claims? Are the references current? Those sorts of things. So one is looking at the structure of it and whether it's grounded in modern principles for that topic area.
All right, thank you. We have 3 more questions that we'll select from our virtual audience unless we have another live question. But I would like to just give Ari and Lee a little heads up, not in my script. Ari, as the visionary for this high-tech technology, tell us, not at this time, but when I come to you, what was your vision? What do you think this will do for the fire service? And then Lee, same thing. The society is undertaking this. This is a major milestone in the development of future fire training. What do you see as the vision for this project? So, there are a number of programs that this virtual attendee says he would consider exceptional. Will there be a mechanism to certify or validate specific programs that are already out there by, somebody calling up, say, hey, Eddie Buchanan's got a great program, why don't you talk to him? Are we going to have a mechanism for that kind of input?
Yes. So we will have ways for someone to provide us with information if you just want to send an email to info@firetcp.org and you think that there's a great course that should be certified as quickly as possible, send an email through that mechanism and someone will follow up with that course provider. In addition, we ask that any of you who do have such information, bring it to us, because one of the things that's going to be happening relatively quickly is there's going to be educational awareness campaigns going out about what this is. And the education is going to go to those that are providing fire training, why this is important, how this helps elevate training, how this is going to help make your training better and recognized in a broader geography. The second group of constituents will be all of the fire departments. When you're looking for training for your guys, this is a seal that you should be aware of that means that this training has actually gone through third-party peer review. So if you see training that has the seal and you see training that doesn't have the seal and it's the same topic area, then you'll know that this one at least has been vetted for quality, and the other one, well, we don't know. It might be a great course, but it might also be terrible. We just simply don't know. And so we have a whole industry to educate, and we're going to be using all sorts of mechanisms to do that. This is over across those two sectors.
All right, John Murphy, they use the word liability in this question, so it's pretty simple who that question goes to.
It's a buzzword for me.
Do you foresee that as this program is finalized, will existing certified training need to be certified in the program? And if a department does not participate, will it increase their liability?
That's a great question. And I think I'll go back to the earlier answers, is that if you do use material to train your firefighters in a certain procedure or technique, there needs to be some validity to the training curricula that you're administering to your firefighters. And so for your attorneys, it would make it a lot easier to defend the department if there was certified or a stamp or a seal of approval or some sort of certification process that's gone through. But yeah, there's like today, like this program is not going to be instantaneously available, so we're going to be developing that particular program. If your organization is already using validated training material that's up to date and has been proven, and there's some standard that it applies that it's derived from, I think the liability, again, is there, but I think we continue to try to minimize the liability on the organization by adding more expertise into the material that you're providing to your firefighters. And it's certainly not to say that the stuff that you're using today, you just don't use it, because I think that there's still a lot of validity to it, and there's a lot of attorneys out there that will defend your department based on the training material that you're providing today. This just adds, I think, another layer for your organization and puts you in a better defendable position, and then removes some of that liability from the organization.
All right, John, thank you very much. Steve, I'm going to throw this one at you, and then I do have one other good question, so Eddie, I'll throw this one at you, and then we'll wrap this up. Since most instructors have databases of records that go back a long time, will all these records be able to be or need to be uploaded into the system?
Well, I think I'm going to have to go to Ari for some of that, because some of that is the technical side of it. But my understanding is, obviously, once you create a profile, everything starts there. We've already mentioned that you'll be able to scan in previous certifications and coursework that you've done into the system. How all that goes and how far back, I don't know how that works.
So maybe a couple things to say. One is we will eventually have mechanisms for importing that data directly into the platform that does not exist today. However, we also provide large-scale systems to many states. And so, for example, in Ohio, we're bringing all of the records together under one database, which then could be, if that's decided by the Ohio State Fire Marshal in their office, one could load all the records historically going back many. Basically importing all of that. I'm not saying or promising it's going to happen here at this conference today, but we see a vision where ultimately those records are mirrored. So from our perspective, there are records that belong to the state. There are records that need to belong to the department because they have to be able to maintain those. And for the first time now, we're creating a digital environment where records for the individual firefighter that can follow them throughout their career profile is now in their hands, and they have control over those records as well. And so, yes, but not today. Something in the future.
All right, thank you. Eddie, if a certified class becomes obsolete, as we all know, training changes, outlines needed to stay current. Will there be a system how it will be reviewed and removed from the database as necessary? How is that going to work?
I mean, without knowing the details of how you've set up, I'm going to guess. I bet I know the answer. These things have to be reviewed regularly. on a recurring basis. And I think that's why the subject matter expert component of this is so important, because it's not only looking at new content, but it's also going back and looking at existing content to make sure it is updated, current, or revised for whatever may have changed. And that's a lot of work. So there's, I think, a lot of opportunity for people that want to be involved in this system to become a subject matter expert in a niche. And you can stay quite busy, I suspect, looking at a combination of new content and recurring content. And I'll defer to you guys.
The recertification cycle will be every 2 years. So in order to maintain the seal of excellence, a training provider has to resubmit that content every 2 years. Any material change to the content requires a recertification of that content. So at least on a 24-month rotating basis, that content is going to have eyes on, subject matter experts looking at it. It needs to have new citations and references and content attached to it so that it's current and fresh.
All right, Ari, thank you very much. We're nearing the conclusion, but Ari, you've never been a firefighter, but you've been in public safety probably for 20 years, whether it's law enforcement, the military, government issues, and you are the high-tech guy. So as the technology guy, how do you see this helping the fire service?
Well, I want to go back to Katrina and watching that wide-scale disaster and the unbelievable fragmentation that was there in terms of left hand not knowing what the right hand was doing. A lot of very, very competent firefighters, EMTs, police officers being turned away from the scene while people were dying, literally, and we didn't have enough hands and boots on the ground to help those folks. And we looked at that and we said, why is this happening? We're in a day where we have technology, we have modern computer technology. Why can't we validate the credentials of the people who are coming in the hot zone? Why can't we know what they're capable of doing and actually utilize these incredible resources that we're streaming from all over the country to help? And the problem is fragmentation. There are 20,000 different fire departments out there. There's 20,000 different police departments. And none of these talk to each other. And so for you to be able to access the knowledge that's in the head of a San Diego firefighter that maybe has the answer that you need right now or has the knowledge that should be transferred to your guys, it's almost impossible to do it. So we asked one simple question. What if we connected everyone together? What would happen? If everyone that was in the public safety world acted like a single organism with cells that were all working together, what would happen? A lot of the problems that we saw would cease to exist. Our ability to share knowledge and good ideas would happen instantaneously. If someone had a groundbreaking idea that was good for the fire service, every firefighter could know about it in a nanosecond. Why can't we do that today? The technology exists. It's a question of not putting a framework in place that was secure and scalable enough in the public safety world to do it. So you ask what our hopes are. Our hopes are that knowledge that needs to be retained is digitized and retained and passed on to those future generations so that they can learn from it, they can become better, and the fire service can become better. And as a result of that, public safety can become better. We are hopeful that in doing some of these things, some of the fundamental problems in wide area disasters can be alleviated, that we can actually achieve finally, so many years after 9/11, so many years, a interoperable credential for first responders. And the only reason we can't do it right now is that there are no standards in terms of everyone having the same data, because who are you, identity, what are you capable of doing, what are your skills, knowledge, and abilities, and so how do I use you in a critical incident? So these are some of the things that we hope. And finally, that we allow the next generation to be the innovators, so that this platform can become a place where new ideas can flourish very, very quickly because there are no barriers. That would be my hopes for this.
All right. Thank you very much. Lee, as our new executive director, full-time executive director, you have brought such energy to the society over the last couple years. You have a vision for this project as well as many others. So help us understand what you see as the outcome of this project and many others you're going to undertake as a society.
I think that's pretty simple in that the society for over 6 decades has dedicated their existence to elevating the level of training within the fire service and empowering instructors to make the right decisions. And that's what this platform will do. It will continue to elevate the level of training that's being offered, and it will empower you to be able, as the consumer, to make those decisions within your department. I think from a visionary perspective, and we talked about it earlier, is that every single firefighter can create a profile for free, which automatically gives them a portable training record. They don't have to buy a single thing or any curriculum, but they can create that portable training record. From a visionary perspective, why wouldn't a firefighter want to create that portable training record for themselves? And so I think that the ISFSI will continue to pour every resource we have into creating that sense of awareness that that is an option for them within their career, and that's a part of their professional development. And so we will continue to allocate resources to make that a reality, and I'd love to see that every single firefighter around the world create a profile. And people say, that's unrealistic and that can't be done, but this organization has done some pretty unrealistic things in the last 10 years, and will continue to do so.
All right, thank you. On behalf of the 4,000 members that belong, 4,000 plus members belong to the International Society of Fire Instructors, I want to thank the panel for their presentation today, for their discussion. I also hope that those that are attending virtually, those of you here in the audience, realize that you are here at the start of something new. That is significant in your career. A start of something new internationally, not locally, not at your state level, not in a country, but internationally. And we can make a difference. Thank you all very much for coming. And now we'll conclude our webinar, our virtual presentation, and we'll take a 15-minute break for those who are here live.
Good job, guys.
Music is playing. You kept sneaking up here with questions.
Job.
Thank you, thank you.
I finally stopped bringing them. I thought he has enough.
Yeah, well, when you said 2 o'clock, I thought we can get done at 2:15, and it'll be